Hey guys, I'm back for the Gameweek 37 preview. Welcome back to the Draft FC podcast, the podcast website and YouTube channel dedicated to all things official Draft FPL. My name is Mitch, I'm your host for another Gameweek preview, going over waiver options, hidden gems and general Premier League chat ahead of Gameweek 37. Now, first things first, massive thanks to Draft FC Kieran for stepping in over the past few weeks while I've been away. I'm sure you'll all agree, did a cracking job, tipped some excellent picks, and I've taken real pride in the consistency of our content output over the last couple of years, so it was very nice to see that carry on no matter what life throws at us. And as he said himself, we'll hope to get him on a bit more again over the summer. It's not been his first time on the pod. Those of you that have been watching will have seen him join me earlier on this season, but we'll try and get him on a bit more over the summer. On a personal note, everyone is doing fine. My wife and daughter are all doing well, and we're all adjusting to the new normal. I'll have my head firmly back in the game now, firmly back in the Draft FC Discord server from tomorrow. And remember, if you want to access that, you need to be a signed up member of Draft FC. Now, you may be thinking, there's probably not much point signing up now with just a couple more weeks to go. But one thing to point out, again, as we always do at this stage of the season, is that if you sign up, even if you sign up very last minute, you can take advantage of our time capsule feature, which saves all of the season data to be able to look back on in months and years to come. Because as you'll know, if you've played draft for a while now, you'll know that once the game refreshes, all of that data is lost forever. And we often get, and it will happen again this summer, we get managers messaging us, asking us if we're able to pull out their data, even though they weren't signed up before. And the answer is no, we do not hold every single draft league data on file. So if you want to have that saved, you need to have signed up and put your league ID in before the end. So you can do that even after Gameweek 38. So even as long as the game is sat there and is live from this season, then you'll be able to save it. But as soon as it refreshes, it is gone. Anyway, feels like this season has absolutely flown by, and we're now just 2 game weeks from yet another conclusion. Hopefully, for those of you that still have some work to do, we can be of some more service to get you over the line. Now is the time to be bold if you need to be. Nobody really is undroppable now. If you enjoyed the podcast, and if you haven't already, make sure you give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes as and when they come. I'm recording this episode on Tuesday the 13th of May, so any team news, injury developments or press conference info are up to date as of then, and of course subject to change. I'm recording this around lunchtime, but probably won't be able to edit and post this until the evening time. So if any big news comes out this afternoon that would be at odds with what I'm saying, then that is the reason why. Some of the players I'll be discussing in this episode include Dwight McNeil, Kevin Schade, Tyreek George, plus many more. So let's get straight into it. So a reminder right at the top, the waiver deadline this week will be on Thursday evening at 6 o'clock because we have a couple of Friday night games, with the main game week deadline being on Friday evening. There's a mistake for those watching on YouTube. That should be game week deadline on Friday the 16th, not Thursday the 16th. In terms of waiver watch, the players coming in last week, we had Amad Diallo as the top player in, which just speaks to the usual wealth of Man United fans that play this game. Doku, Coyote, McNeil, Nketiah, Schade, Calvert-Lewin, Garnacho and Van den Berg. Some pretty good moves there, actually. The players making way: Maddison, Hudson-Odoi, Decore, Rashford, Tonali, Nwaneri, Breuer, O'Brien and Mitoma. So a lot of the injured players and players falling out of favour getting cleared out, though Tonali obviously scored against Arsenal, so not a great drop there for those of you that had brought him in for those doubles before that. In terms of key injuries and suspensions, just a handful really. The main injury is one from the week before, which is Rodrigo Muniz for Fulham, who's been a popular pickup because he's been doing pretty good stuff off the bench. But it sounds like his season is most likely over, unfortunately for him. So do look elsewhere, even if you need someone that's just going to get a few minutes off the bench. Elsewhere, the main things to point out were sending off. So Marino and Ramsey were both 2 yellows, so they'll be back for game 38. But Nico Jackson got a straight red for an elbow, and so he will be done now for the remainder of the league campaign. He'll miss Gameweek 37 and Gameweek 38, which, whenever a door closes, another door opens, and we'll be discussing that towards the end of this episode. A quick look at the fixtures. I mean, we can with some ease because there are only a couple of weeks left now, and obviously I've been away for a few weeks. The current Premier League landscape makes navigating these final 2 weeks tricky because there are very few teams that are actually in truly good form. City and Brentford are probably the standouts. Brentford and Villa are the only two teams who have won their last 2 league games, but the thing we can rely on is how poor the teams at the bottom of the table are. The only thing I caution is that Leicester have finally remembered the aim of the game is to score goals and are starting to pick up some consolation points for whatever reason. And as Manchester City found at the weekend, Southampton have also started to try and play for some last-minute pride. So we say it every year, it's not just the teams who are still fighting for things that we can rely on. Forest are another great example of the opposite. 1 win in their last 5 league games now, struggling to score goals. Look, they looked firmly in the driving seat for a Champions League spot just a couple of months ago, now looking like they potentially will have to settle for a spot in a third-tier European competition. Still a great result for them. If you'd offered them that at the beginning of the season, they'd have bitten your hand off. But given the level up they can or could receive if they get a Champions League spot, potentially massively disappointing for them. If we look at the remaining 2 fixtures each team has, there are a few teams that I like the look of, and no doubt I'm sure will have caught your eye too. Villa face the 2 teams who are already firmly on the beach, and we know exactly where that beach is. It's just a few miles north of Bilbao. That is Spurs and Man United. Aston Villa should have no trouble dispatching both of them for 6 points in what should be enough to see them clinch a top 5 spot. I do worry, though, it could come down to goal difference, and Villa are well off all the other teams in that bracket in terms of goal difference, and so it would be a shame if they were to slip into the Europa League spot just on that. Brentford, as mentioned, are in form, have 2 very comfortable games left against teams who are struggling for form themselves. Some may say Brentford have nothing left to play for, but their highest ever Premier League finish was 2 years ago when they came 9th. They still have the chance to finish where they sit currently in 8th, which would be incredible given that their 5-year net spend sits at just £95 million, putting them 15th. So Frank can secure an 8th place finish with the resources they've had. Off the back of losing Ivan Toney as well, it would really put extra shine on his already glowing CV. Chelsea are very much scrapping for a Champions League spot, currently sat 5th with Villa, City, Newcastle and Forest all fighting for those remaining spots too. United at home, then Forest away. Similarly with Villa, I would back, despite their ups and downs, I would back Chelsea to take 6 points against those teams, which should seal a top 5 finish for them. The sending off of Nico Jackson means we do have some targets to discuss. Hopefully that sending off doesn't cost them a Champions League spot. Everton are ones to look at just for this week, simple as that. The same with Leicester. Ipswich at home, I expect Leicester to win and score goals in that one. Liverpool have Brighton away, Crystal Palace at home. Neither of those opponents have much to play for in the league, and I think Liverpool should be too strong even as they wind down towards the summer break. With many suggesting that they're already on the beach, but I still think they'll win both of those. And then finally, City in excellent form despite that draw against Southampton. Haaland back. Bournemouth at home is tricky, but I'd expect City to win that comfortably even still. Let's get into some of the main picks now, starting with the defenders, and Chris Richards is here mainly as a placeholder for the Palace defence in general. He remains the easiest way in. Ownership is just 16% in 10-team leagues. So a home game against Wolves, one of the better looking ones on paper, but would any of us really be surprised if Wolves scored in that game? Next is Coyote, who was high up on the waived in list last week for Brentford. 24% ownership means that surged pretty quickly, actually, after a very impressive few weeks since getting into the starting 11, which he's had to be patient for. Brentford have a buy option on his loan deal from Fiorentina, and I'd be very surprised if they don't formalise that in the summer. They'll want a good look at him over the next couple of weeks, and so I think it's pretty guaranteed to start the last 2. And as I said, Brentford are one of the, if not the informed team in the league, and should continue to end the season well. Next is Ashley Young for Everton. Ownership pretty modest at 40%. Obviously, they've got that home game against Southampton. Came back into the side with a defensive reshuffle last week. It does make it a bit tricky to choose between them all because they could line up differently again this weekend. This is one really to pay attention to with the press conference news, because if O'Brien remains out, then I think they'll line up as they did last weekend. If O'Brien is back in, then Young may well miss out. So this call-out should also serve for any of the Everton defenders that you think will start if they are available. And then finally is Akanji. Ownership about 50% in 10-team leagues. I'd sort of forgotten about Akanji, but he is first choice for Manchester City, and now he's back fit. We're seeing that again. City still have to play hard, and dropping 2 points at Southampton was not in the script for them, so it means they have to win both their remaining games to guarantee Champions League football next season. Akanji is pure clean sheet potential. He does not get anywhere near an attacking return. Not one I'm particularly bothered about, but if you wanted to cover off an opponent who has some City defenders or maybe Ederson already, then he is an option. Into midfield, and as ever this season, a good number of options around the periphery of the waiver pile here. Starting at the lower end of ownership and moving up, we'll start with Nketiah. 20% ownership now, that's been creeping up each week. You'll all know I'm a fan, and if you fancy Ipswich against Leicester in that game, then he is probably the main one you'll be able to find with any hope of a return besides Delap, who you won't be able to get. The underlying stats won't blow you away, so this is purely if you fancy Ipswich to get a result. If you need to double down versus an opponent, or particularly in classic scoring leagues, if you see that your league rival stacks up on a couple of Leicester defenders, then going with an Ipswich attacker lets you maximise a swing in those points if you've got some catching up to do. Next, and there'll be you can see there's a whole string of Draft FC favourites. As I've been out of the game, I'm just falling back on my bread and butter picks here. And we've got Thomas Souček, ownership 39%. They've got a home game against Nottingham Forest. They also follow that up with an away trip to Ipswich. So a decent little finish for West Ham, despite their own poor form. And after some iffy team selections from Potter, which I guess you could argue is just him using these remaining games as a free hit to explore the squad, Souček is back into the starting 11. He's scoring and is one goal away now from equaling his most productive Premier League season, which came back in the 2020-21 season. Though would have done it this year from far, far fewer minutes. So a very good season for him. Proper Draft FC, and remains one of the most underrated players in the Premier League. On to Dwight McNeil. Kieran shouted him last week. I added a little comment in the edit to say that I'd already picked him up. And amazingly, despite missing the majority of the season, McNeil is another player with a personal record in his sights. If he gets one more attacking return, he'll equal his best ever season tally of 10, which he did in the 22-2023 season, where he got 7 goals and 3 assists. He's currently on 4 goals and 5 assists. So actually, he's on 7 assists if you include the FPL ones, and has a home game against Southampton now to try and get over that line. He's somebody I picked up half asleep a few weeks ago, and I'm glad I did because he's been pretty productive over the last 2 game weeks. Only the 1 start since returning, but I'm hoping he can start the last couple to round off what is going to ultimately be a pretty good season against the odds. Next is Pedro Neto for Chelsea. His ownership up to 60% now. I think Neto should be picked up in most leagues of more than 8 teams at this stage. The second half of the season has been much better than the first, and that's mostly down to more reliable minutes and starts. The sending off of Jackson, combined with Sancho being ineligible to play against United, means he's pretty much guaranteed to start and play the full 90. Returning to Team Draft FC, we have Mohamed Kudus, 65%. You can see here that Kudus' ownership is higher than Neto's, which probably shouldn't be the case. And I've said a few times already this season how disappointing it's been for Kudus, who is well off what I had him projected to do back in the summer. But 3 returns in his last 6, with decent fixtures left at home to Forest and away to Ipswich, means he should add at least 1 more before the end. Continuing with Team Draft FC, it's Kevin Schala, whose ownership is rocketing up and now sits at 84%, which is pleasing to see. The most agonising part of my paternity leave has been not being able to come on here and bang on about Schala every week. Luckily, Kieran got the message and shouted him out, because 33 points in the space of 3 game weeks is the sort of cameo that could have turned a season around for a draft manager. The lineup is nice and stable, and if Brentford go off, there's every chance Schala is as much a part of that as Visser or Mbeumo are at the moment. Say, ownership has rightly soared, but don't be put off by thinking that you've missed the train. If he was available in your league still, I would 100% pick him up. And then finally, it's Szoboszlai for Liverpool. His ownership in 10-team leagues is up to 90%, but there will be more availability in some smaller leagues, and I think he's well worth a pick up, even though, as I said, lots will be thinking Liverpool are on the beach. I still think they will perform well in the last 2 games. In his last 5 Premier League appearances, around 280 minutes, he's got 3 assists, expecting goal involvements of more than 3, and non-penalty expected goal involvements per 90 of above 1. He loves the shot, probably why he has 4 FPL assists, putting him on 10 over his official stat of 6 assists this season. And as I said, I do expect him to add to that before the end of Gameweek 38. A very quick note for owners of Saka or Salah, and say not usual players we will be discussing in the middle of a Gameweek preview because, ownership is rightly at 100%. But a very quick note to say that despite very disappointing form in recent weeks by their own very high standards, both Salah and Saka have been putting up expecting goal involvements per 90 of more than 1. We look at their last 6 Premier League appearances. Saka has no goal involvements in that time, but he's definitely due one. The same with Salah, who's been relatively quiet in the last few games himself. The temptation here is to feel like the Wolf of Wall Street, start trading these guys away, or even throwing them into the waiver pile ahead of Gameweek 38, knowing no one can pick them up, which you're very welcome to do, providing, as I said, you're not trading to a direct league rival or anything. But my advice would be to carry them to the end now, and I expect both of them to get attacking returns before the season is over. Again, it's not the most bold prediction to make in the world, but just if any of you were getting second thoughts or were starting to be tempted by trade offers, my advice is keep hold. Comment below any players I haven't mentioned that you're interested in this week. As I said, I will be very active both in the Discord and I'll respond to every one of the YouTube comments. Any questions that you have, I will reply to every single one of them before the waiver deadline on Thursday. But into Hidden Gems, got a few of these to cover, starting with a couple of goalkeepers. That fixture between Ipswich and Leicester, both of their keepers are widely available in draft leagues. Palmer, and I'm not going to even try and pronounce the Leicester keeper's name, but my advice would be to maybe go for a Leicester clean sheet here. If you didn't fancy any of the keepers that you've been holding on to, could just pick one of these guys up for a little punt in Gameweek 37. Into defenders, the main one to highlight in Hidden Gem territory for me was Michael Keane for Everton, just 6% owned. Southampton at home, quite an impressive goal scoring record for Keane, considering very limited appearances this season. And, despite his defensive shortcomings, always makes him worth a punt in draft when we know he could nut one in from a corner. He came in due to that injury to O'Brien, but I reckon they'll go with Keane again after last weekend's performance, even if O'Brien is fit. Patterson was the other one that missed out. I think even if O'Brien is fit, Keane is well worth a punt. Just make sure you've got a playing player at the front of your bench if you do want to gamble on a Michael Keane pickup. Into the midfielders, and again, sticking with Everton, in fact, we'll do both the Everton guys. Abdoulaye Doucouré, a very boring way into the Everton midfield for that Southampton game. Ownership just 9% in 10-team leagues. The other one with far lower ownership, so pretty much available for most of you listening, is Carlos Alcaraz, and a player with big, weak potential, facing his old team, which should add a little bit more extra bite, a little bit more extra motivation, and say off the back of back-to-back attacking returns in Gameweek 35 and 36. Another player that lots of managers, I think, should be considering with very little time remaining, and a bit more of a wildcard pick over the likes of someone like Abdoulaye Doucouré. Another player who's been in and out of Hidden Gem territory all season long, or probably for the last 2 or 3 seasons now, is Marcus Tavernier for Bournemouth. 9% ownership in 10-team leagues at the moment, and will continue to start with Dango's absence, and remains one of the most efficient assets in the game, averaging a goal or assist about 1 out of every 2 games he plays a full 90. And with 2 games left, that makes him a fairly safe pair of hands for managers who don't need to gamble too much, don't need anything spectacular, but just need to tick over with some points. Going back to that fixture between Leicester and Ipswich is El Canouse. His ownership just 2%, a good value pickup, and one I think will end up quite popular in the post-waiver market this week in free agency, as managers maybe look to freshen up their midfield. 3 assists in the last 5 games. He starts every game, and does also have a big week in him, similar to Alcaraz. He got a 14-pointer at home against West Ham in Game Week 14. So, yeah, another one that could be quite a fun pick for Game Week 37. The final one of the midfielders, and the one I've got highlighted as our most hidden gem pick this week, is Tyreek George for Chelsea. He's barely played 100 league minutes for Chelsea this season, thrust into the first team, largely due to the absence of Mikhailo Mudryk. We've seen him playing as a number 9 in their Europa Conference League campaign lately, where he's performed well, albeit against obviously lower standard opposition. And with Jackson's league season over, and Sancho not being able to face his parent club, United, this week, there's every chance that George gets the nod to start as the Chelsea number 9. His ownership in 16-team leagues is a complete zero. Not a single 16-team league has him picked up currently, and that's generally the case across most of the draft universe. This is by no means a guarantee. He is not guaranteed to start. Chelsea could shuffle Cole Palmer further forward. Palmer could play off one of the wings. Pedro Neto could play as the number 9. And then they could move the likes of Reece James back into the lineup. So there are other ways around this. There's also another potential starter who is a more natural fit as a number 9, who we'll discuss in just a few seconds' time. But I think given the state of the squad, the fitness of the squad, recent form, say he has got some pedigree already in the league. He got a winner against, I think it was Fulham a few weeks ago. I think the odds that George lines up as the starting 9 for Chelsea on Friday night are about 80%. So a pretty good shout there. It's a shame he's not listed as a forward, but say he's naturally a left winger. It's a shame he's not listed as a forward because lots of us would welcome a forward option at this stage of the season. But there is another teammate of his who could fill that void, and that is Mark Guiu. Ownership just 2% in 10-team leagues. To say he is the most natural backup to Jackson, and he's rarely seen the pitch in the Premier League all season long, most recently due to injury. Comments were that he was on the verge of being fit enough for the bench last week, so he almost certainly should be fit enough for the bench this Friday night, and seems like he's back in full training now. I think the likely scenario here is that George starts, Guiu comes on to play maybe 20 minutes off the bench at the end. So definitely a consideration for big league managers looking for a forward option, or any league manager, to be honest, who just needs a forward that may come off the bench and get 1 point, because that still could be all the difference between winning your head-to-head matchup and drawing it. So yeah, as I say, it could be that if Guiu comes on and does okay, he might get the nod to start in Gameweek 38. So yeah, definitely worth it. And I know lots of us will be hanging on to some really subpar forward options like Onuachu for Southampton, Richarlison for Spurs. Guiu could be more of a punt than them. First pass of the predicted lineups are all done. I did those yesterday, and we'll probably tweak them again tomorrow night, if not Thursday morning, for your last minute consideration as you're doing your waivers. So that is it for this episode. A reminder, the waiver deadline is Thursday evening, 6 o'clock UK time, ahead of a Friday night deadline with 2 Friday night games and a game that stretches right through to Tuesday as we go then into the final waiver deadline ahead of Gameweek 38. So hopefully, for those of you that haven't already wrapped up league wins, you're still in with a chance, and hopefully we can get some players for you that get you over the line and win those all-important matchups and get those all-important points to get you the success you deserve as we head towards the end now. So make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss out on next week, and also as we head into the summer, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on all of our pre-season content, which will fly around before you know it. For those listening on the audio, make sure you are signed up and following on whichever podcast platform you listen on so you don't miss out on those episodes either. And remember, if you want to have access to the Discord channel, if you want to have access to be able to save all of your league data this season in our time capsule feature, then head over to draftfc.co.uk and sign up there. So we'll leave things there in the interest of time. Best of luck for those matchups and best of luck for those points in your classic scoring leagues. Hope you get to where you need to be. As well as questions on your squad, do also comment below how you're getting on in your season, if you've already wrapped up wins, etc. It's always nice to hear that. So do comment below, even if you don't have anything particular to ask. I'll get back to those comments just as much as I will the questions. As I say, hope you've all been well while I've been away. It's good to be back, and I'll see you again for the last Gameweek preview of the season next week. And until then, stay sure.